Welcome to Power Up Podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, Amma Rouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, well-being advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Ella Mesmer, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up. Welcome listeners, we are back with the second episode in our series all around mental health. We hope you enjoyed the first episode, and if you haven't listened, why have you not listened? We're super gassed to have Ahmad with us today. Ahmad, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Ahmad is the creator of Shook Man, a character who represents our fears and anxieties and is an engaging way for people to talk about their mental health. Ahmad understands people who feel powerless in life, who used to be that way. For 10 plus years, Ahmad studied the best courses on human nature. He has coached hundreds of people around the world and produced podcasts, events, and courses. Welcome, Ahmad.
Hey.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Shook Man, Ahmad, and where the inspiration came from to create him?
Yeah, I mean, Shook Man for me really began when me and my friends used to would go out and, we were young guys in clubs wanted to talk to women. And we noticed that every single time we saw someone that we were attracted to or we thought, we'd like to go over and talk to, there was this little voice that would jump up in our heads and tell us why it was a bad idea to go or why it would go wrong and why we shouldn't do it. And over time, we started to refer to that voice as Shook Man. So then me and my friends would be like, oh, Shook Man's talking. And then from that point, it then expanded from beyond just dating into other areas in life where we feel shook and what's Shook Man saying? Shook Man's telling me I shouldn't go for this job or that, I don't know, starting this particular project is a bad idea or, why I can't shoot for my dreams. And then that's where it really sort of, for me, became more of a concept that I paid more attention to. And it wasn't until 2016 when I had been studying intuition and I got this idea. I hadn't really taken any sort of drawing courses or anything drawing seriously, but I just got this idea to draw a character. And in 2016, I sat down with literally pen and paper and I drew the first ever Shook Man. And it just came to me in the shapes and the figure, the face, the size. And that's where it all kind of began. And since 2016, the idea has just continuously evolved. And even I now have a much better understanding of fear and different things around anxiety or how some people refer to as ego. I have a much deeper awareness through this character called Shook Man. So for me, just to round off, what Shook Man has become a way for me to engage with my fears or with my ego. And so I can actually understand it as a character separate to me.
I love the idea of personifying him.
And I just wanted to say as well, for any listeners who don't know what shook means, it is London slang and it means to be scared or to be fearful. So yeah, hence why Shook Man.
Yeah, and actually what I discovered recently, I forget his name now, but there's books out on this psychological concept called internal family systems, where it goes way deeper into this concept of actually interacting with different parts of us within ourselves that we all have. So it's not just, I was amazed because I was like, oh great, like there's actually like science behind this concept. It's not just me talking stuff, right? But someone spent 40 years and worked with numerous clients and discovered that we all have different sides to us. And through interacting with them, we can discover like what, like it, essentially we create these entities, as we said it, like to protect us or to kind of secure us from something that we experienced in the past. So it's quite interesting, like the more I get into this work.
And I'm wondering, like, I'm starting to get that sense of the connection to mental health, but in terms of your vision of how that can help people with their mental health, where does Shookman come in?
Yeah, like again, I spent so much of my like youth, I suppose, like delving into personal development and exploring different things. So I've learned a lot, like in terms of like, I guess like a foundational essence of personal development and human nature. And where Shookman fits in is taking all these concepts but making it visible. And when you can see it, like one of the things that I say is when you can see it, it takes the power out of fear. It's like it makes it less scary.
Yes.
So for me, my dream is to make this make this accessible, like to people all over the place. So I'd love for Shookman to be in movies, and in this way, people are interacting. I mean, for me, it's the idea of it is not to kind of like make another course necessarily. I mean, there may well be courses, but to have this essence of media and entertainment and story so that people interact with this idea as a story concept as opposed to a course or like something they have to learn. But then inside of that story, growing their awareness around their fears and how they can interact with fears and what their fears even mean.
Because you mentioned that actually the root of this was from when you were much younger, actually. Can you tell us about that, a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. Like for me, I was thinking about this like before we jumped onto this like podcast, and I was thinking about like what has been my history of like mental health and my experience. And looking back, or rather like going forwards, I never really appreciated it. But looking back, I could see now that I had like crippling anxiety and like issues with like my own initiatives and my own like self leadership. And when you're young, it's kind of like, okay, cool, I'm a bit insecure. But as you get older, you can really feel the effects of that because you see other people getting on with their lives, and then you feel like, why can't I? Like, why am I not taking action in the same way, or why do I feel so stuck? And it's even worse when people tell you like, oh, you're very talented, and you're like, oh god, like then like why am I not doing like better with this, and so for me, like when I look back, and I mean the simplest and most obvious thing is obviously it's decisions that I made about who I was when I was a child. And like growing up, my dad, for whatever reason, like he always occurred to me as like a really angry man. And so like when I was young, I would essentially like hide myself. Like I would suppress my expression in his presence because I started to believe that I upset people by just being me, and as I say that, we can all appreciate as kids, like kids just be, and then sometimes people get annoyed, and then we don't realize the impact that has like on a child. And for me, I remember a story where like I can't remember, I think I was like in school or something, and I heard someone like mention barbers or whatever, and my dad used to cut my hair. And then one day after he cut my hair, I was like, "Oh, Dad," I was really like, just like kind of like casual but curious and excited, and just like, "Oh, Dad, it'd be nice if I went to like, a barber's next time." And he got so annoyed, like he was angry, and I never understood why at the time. And he was like, "Oh, you go to the barbers, you'll see what they do. They'll mess up your hair." And like as a kid, I must have been like 5 or something, and I was like shocked at that reaction. And I just made it mean that like, oh god, like I can't just like when I say what I want, then people get upset. So from that point onwards, like that became a reoccurring thing in my life where I wouldn't I wouldn't like follow my own initiative, and I would tiptoe around like, and like in all, and it affected all areas of my life, like not just work, but also relationships, dating, like everything. Even like now I'm touching my chest, feeling like, oh, that's where the shock was. Just like, oh my God, like he's shouting at me for having an idea that I was just curious about.
Yeah. Yeah, and bless, because actually these little moments when kids, they don't even know, they don't even probably know what a Barbers is. They're just like, I want to know what this thing is in the world, right?
Absolutely.
But then I'm sure that your dad was like, how dare you insult my haircut?
Yeah. Looking
Probably
back,
took it really personally, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Probably,
and like, you know, the amount of times with my goddess kids where like they say something and I love their honesty and their, you know, and you just have to be like, hey, they don't know the layers of personal, like that I could take as being really offensive, and just to be like open-hearted to their beauty and their innocence with the questions. And I was interested in, like, you know, you said people who feel powerless and how much that connects to kind of these experiences when you were younger.
Yeah, like I feel that's essentially like one's initiative or one's curiosity in life to pursue that, and to kind of, you know, you get to a point where you want to explore, you want to go out, you want to try things, you want to do things, whether it's business or art or whatever, right? Like life, I really feel like life is for us to experience. And when I felt like I couldn't just go with my initiatives or my curiosity or say how I really feel, then that's my power. Like, and then I feel powerless. And that, like I mentioned earlier, like I didn't realize, obviously, only like am I making more sense of it in the last like few years, but that led to like high anxiety and depression and just really feeling stuck, like really not knowing why. And people often label that as lazy, or like, you know, procrastination, or like, you know, oh, you're not going to get up to anything, you're not going to do anything with your life, not realizing it's just like, it's like being inside an invisible electric fence. You're just not even willing to go beyond that.
And so how did you get, Ahmad, from that realization, like, oh, hold on, there's a root to the way I'm feeling, there's a root that connects all of these experiences I'm having where I'm not fully participating in life, where I'm not like the center of my own story because I'm suppressing myself, basically. How did you get from that realization to now? And like, where did that realization come from? Where did the connection come, where you were like, this is the puzzle, like I can see the picture now? Because I think a lot of listeners will be like, okay, how did you piece all of that together? And then how did you go from that realization in 2016 to journeying to where you are now?
Yeah. So the answer is like, it's not like a one-off event that like got me from there to here. There's a multitude of different things that I've done in my life, but I think like for the listeners, what is most useful is the mindset that I carried. Like I always had this feeling of curiosity of there being more. And so then I would follow that curiosity to find ways to like expand myself and my expression. So amongst the various things that I've tried, and I wouldn't suggest like this is like a checklist for anyone. Like I think everyone has to find their own. Like my personal belief with Shookman is like, it's having awareness of Shookman is one thing, and my job is to really like, I feel like my job is really to share about Shookman, but getting to know your personal Shookman is your own personal journey, and we're all going to go on our own different ones. So my personal journey involved learning about my intuition and using and learning how to follow my intuition in my day-to-day life. And why that was so important was because that showed me that there, like inside my mind or inside my body, there was a sense of joy and love, and that went beyond my fears. And when I connected with that, the more I connected with that, the clearer I became about what it was that I actually enjoyed doing, which was pretty tough at first. Like I couldn't even see it. Like anyone who's known me for a long time would know that I would tend to dither before, because I didn't have any connection, or I wouldn't allow myself to feel it, because as I was saying before, as soon as there's something that I might enjoy, then that's married with the idea that I might upset people.
Yeah.
And so I had to unlearn. So one of the things I like to talk about nowadays is what I call unstory. So I believe that we all live by a narrative that we've created from when we were young. And unstory is the idea of learning to let go of like this story and essentially become innocent again, like a child, and allow ourselves to play and allow ourselves to rediscover who we are. I suppose in a way, like I feel like that is, or that has been my life's journey, right? Is to start there and to find my way. Yeah. To find my way here where I'm now talking about it. And this has become my passion. Yeah. And it also involves art and me expressing myself, which is all like very vulnerable at first. Like I always felt like people are going to ridicule me. Like, who am I to draw pictures and say I'm an artist and stuff? But now, obviously, I say obviously, but maybe it's not so obvious, but I feel like that's what we're here to do in life, is to express joy.
Two things come to mind. One is a quote, which I'm going to paraphrase, from Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and also wrote Big Magic. And in Big Magic, she says, when we're thinking about this concept, of, like you were saying, Ahmad, who am I to make art, and who am I to be creative and go with my intuition? And she says, you can think about it in this way. I am here, I exist, and so I'm allowed to own my voice, have a vision, and have creative expression purely because of that. I am formed from the universe. I am created, and the universe is creation. So how could I not be allowed to be creatively expressive? And I'm just like, yes, everything you just said. I'm like, yes, that is like the truth of it. And that goes for everyone. And it's really easy to get caught up in, all of the story. But actually, as you start to like unlearn, you start to realize that really is the truth. And the second thing I wanted to say is I can't wait to see a Shookman graphic novel. That's just what I see in my head, like Persepolis. I'm like, oh, graphic novel, Shookman, yes! It would be so great.
When is it out, Ahmad? No pressure.
Well, I mean, currently I've actually got like a short, I call it a mini book that's currently free to download, and there's loads of graphics in there. It's not quite, it was designed actually when I designed it, my intention was to create a piece of art, not to create like an ebook, but to make a little piece of art. So I've got loads of my art in there, and it is designed in the fashion of a graphic novel. But yeah, you know what? I like this journey is like a lovely big journey where like everything and all the ideas I feel will come to fruition. And it's just like I'm currently in the midst of building and just putting in the foundations. And at some point, different things are going to pop off, and it's just like doing that. So the graphic novel, I feel like movies or shorts, and these are all things that I'd love to create. Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah.
If anyone's listening and they're like, "Ooh, yeah, collaboration," want to help Ahmad do that? Details
You know what to
in
do.
the show notes.
And finally, Ahmad, your work does also have this focus on young people, particularly young men. It would be really nice to just hear a little bit about that and kind of what your vision is.
For me personally, I've seen how much fear has impacted my life and my creativity and my enjoyment of life. And like I said, I feel like, who really knows what life is about other than the experiences that we're having and the enjoyment of it and the creativity that we get to do while we're here on this beautiful planet. And obviously there's a lot going on right now for various reasons with regard to young men and their confidence, their creativity, their spirit. And I would love for, it's not just for young men really, but like I would love for like all people in the future to be more adept with dealing with different things that have come up in their life and understand how to transmute things like fear and anger into creativity, and to understand how to turn these things into joy in the same way as which I'm doing with Shook Man. And I think in a way that is a sense of like mastery with life. And I feel like it's a journey that we're all like on in our own individual ways. And my particular way is to do that with storytelling and Shook Man and coaching. So that would be my vision, is just like a future where like there's this idea that if everyone did what they loved, like everything would be sorted in the world. And there's that sense of people getting into touch with that way of living, and less of the manipulation or fighting for resources and that sort of stuff.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the Power Up Power Team.
I'm Ella Mesmer.
I am Amma Rouge. And we are Power Up Podcast.